So now I'm going to take you through the advanced Instagram. By now you will have learned all the basics, tried out adding photos, and then you would have gone through the intermediate Instagram training, which is really all about you understanding how to use Instagram as a business. And the advanced Instagram is just once you've got all of that and you perhaps want to just produce high quality photos. So really this is much more about how to create a slightly more professional photo, be a bit more artistic. So it's for the more artistic people amongst you. You certainly don't need to definitely have done the advanced in order to be good at using Instagram for a business. But it's just the next level. And if you're into photography or if you've enjoyed using Instagram so far, then it's definitely worth trying out. So, take you through how to take a great photo. So, what's the subject of your photo? Before you start, think about what you're taking a photograph of. What's the main focus? Is it an animal? Is it a child? Is it a building? And then think about the context, so in relation to its surroundings. How much of the surroundings do you really want to have in there? You might want it to be a very intimate portrait. So you just really want to focus on the person or the animal, or you might really want to see it in context. You might want to see the animal in its surroundings. You might see a cat stalking a bird. You might be trying to tell a story. So the first thing is just to think about what you're taking a photograph of. And now we're just going to take you through something that is completely unrelated to social media and is really about going back to the basics about photo composition. And this is also composition of artwork as well, actually. So I think it's anything to do with composition of pieces that are put together in one picture. And there are two elements. One of them is about symmetry, and the other one is about the rule of thirds, which sounds very technical, but is actually not. So the first one is symmetry. Interestingly, people really respond to beautiful symmetry, which is something being equal on either a vertical plane, or perhaps it can be symmetrical only on a horizontal plane, or sometimes it's almost symmetrical on both planes. And weirdly, this is actually a genetic thing. I won't go too much into the detail about that, but it relates to why everyone finds Brad Pitt good looking, or why everyone finds, or most people find, like Tom Cruise good looking. So the more symmetrical people's faces are, the better looking that people think they are. So actually, it's really inbuilt in us, this symmetry, which is quite interesting. And if you're not sure with what this might look like in a photo, here's just some examples of some photos that are very satisfyingly symmetrical. So this is a beautiful photograph of a swimming baths. I don't know where it is. I wish it was around the corner from my house. And you can see that this is asymmetrical on one single plane only, but actually that symmetry is mimicked in the upper plane, but it is mainly symmetrical right down the middle, as is this, which is also a very beautiful swimming baths. And this. And then this is a portrait of someone that's very symmetrical. So she's right in the middle, completely matching either side. This one is really interesting because this is very symmetrical almost on both planes. And this is one of the reasons I think that people really find beautiful those landscape images on water where you can see the reflection, because we respond both to the fact that it's completely symmetrical if you look down the middle of the plane, but also it's completely symmetrical this way. So it's really, really beautiful. And this is another example of something that's almost identically symmetrical on both planes. So just really satisfying photos. So think about, and you can use symmetry in your photos, and you will notice how other people use symmetry. You also see it in films. So sometimes when you look at a shot within a film, you can see it's very beautiful. It's really symmetrical. So that's one of them. And then the one that sounds much more technical is what's called the rule of thirds, but it's really not technical at all. It's really straightforward. So basically, it's about breaking up a grid into 3 sections lengthways and 3 sections widthways. And then the subject should really sit within key areas of the grid. So this is what the grid effectively should look like. And you should think about the subject being along the planes of the thirds and focused centrally on these yellow spots. Which sounds more complicated than the symmetry, but actually it's not. And again, I think it's best if we just take you through some photos so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So here's a really beautiful photograph, and it very much obeys the law of thirds. So you can see that the subject, which is the bottle, is perfectly placed within the two hotspots that we talked about. So it's just really beautiful composition. And then same goes for this pear. So the centre of the pear where the light is falling is bang in one of the hotspots. And in and of itself, the pear is very much focused within this line. Same with the person. You can see that this little boy is very much centred in the third line here. So it's very much sort of in the two hotspots. Same goes for the lighthouse in this picture. This is an absolutely stunning picture, actually. I don't know where this is, but I just really want to go and just hang out on that lighthouse. Same for the lighthouse, same for this bee. Well, actually, its eye is right slap bang. Right slap bang in the hotspot. And same goes for this bird. And also this man, even so his eye is right slap bang, but also, yeah, so his eye level is on this line of thirds. So that's interesting. So all those are very beautiful photos, and they all very much obey what's called the rule of thirds. But it might be difficult for you to sort of think, well, actually, yes, I can see that they look nice, but what's the difference? I don't believe that they could look massively different if you just slightly moved things a little bit. So there's just some examples of perhaps where it's not so great. So here's the guy that we talked about. So if you centered him according to the law of thirds, where his eye line, so there's also symmetry working in this one, actually. So he's right in the middle, but they've made sure that his eye line is in this line of third here. So if you move him a little bit, you can just see that it's just not quite, just doesn't feel quite right. It just feels slightly off. He's slightly chopped off his head. The sort of the line of focus is just somewhere on his cheek. Like you're just not drawn in quite the same way, I don't think. It just feels a little bit odd. And again, if you kind of move him, he's kind of occupying just far too. It's just not quite right. He feels sidelined, as if the subject isn't quite about him. Is it about this thing here? You don't really know. So hopefully you can kind of see the distinction there. And then let's go back to the woman from the symmetrical photos. I mean, she'd probably be ideal if her eye line was just there. So actually, if she was moved down a little bit, this probably would be even better. But that's still pretty good. So there's symmetry there. But if you sort of move her a little bit to the left, it doesn't quite work. Again, it's sort of just doesn't quite work. But actually, if you, instead of it being symmetrical, you think about those law of thirds, and you move her just a little bit more, actually that really works, because then you're really pulled in, and you can see her and her eyes on that line. So that one just seems a little bit clunky. That one, I think, is much more arresting. You really pay attention to it. So just have a little think about that. There's tons of stuff on the internet about the rules of thirds and examples of photos. So I mean, maybe you could go back over your old Instagram photos and just have a think about them in light of this potentially new information. You might have known about this before. Don't know how into photography you are, but yeah, just go and give them this other lens. So look over them and think about how they work in terms of the law of thirds. And there are some advanced tools for Instagram to make your photos better. One of them relates to this, so I'll just take you through those. So we showed you in the first tutorial the kind of basic dashboard and the foundations of taking a good photo. So took you through the home and the news and the profile. So if we Now take a photo, this is what comes up. So you've clicked on the take a photo, you now get this dashboard. We talked about the fact that you can then go and upload a photo that you've already taken on your camera there, and that's a video. And not to worry too much about that because that's in a separate tutorial. But this one, this take a photo, to take an immediate photo, play around with that within the context of what we've been talking about, because if you press this, you get a slightly advanced pull-up of a grid, and then this is a flip camera, and then this is a flash. So what this means is that it creates that grid for you so that you can actually, when thinking about the rule of thirds, create the right composition much more easily. So actually Instagram knows about the rule of thirds and makes it kind of easy for you. Then you can just flip the camera and take a selfie or shoot behind you. I don't tend to like the way that works, but you can try it out. And then the flash, so you can actually turn off the flash if you're finding it a bit of a problem. And then this is another, once you've actually taken the photo, so you've got your grid, you've thought about the rules of thirds, and you've captured the photo, this is the next dashboard that comes up. So we talked you through the filters, all the different filters underneath, and by now you should have tried lots of those out. You might have a few favourites. But what you might not have noticed or sort of played around with is the dashboard that comes up at the top. So there's the kind of border icon, depth of field icon, brightness icon, and that's the rotate icon. So the border one is fairly straightforward. So you might have seen some of the filters, they actually add a border. And if you don't like that, you can take that off. And I mean, sometimes it works really nicely, but if you wanted to take lots of photos and you wanted them to be quite uniform, it can break them up and it makes them seem quite different because some of the borders are quite obvious, quite striking. So I can understand that sometimes it's useful to get rid of those. And then, I don't know if you know what depth of field is. The one, any of you mums who are quite into photography will already know, but even if you don't necessarily know the technological term, you certainly will have seen it employed in films and in photography. But basically, it's where you just play around with making the background slightly out of focus and the real subject of your photograph sharply in focus. Now, the depth of field icon in Instagram is it's not as amazing as on an SLR camera, but I mean it's interesting. So it's something else to play around with. When you press it, these two little icons will come up, and basically all that is it will fade out in a circular way. So it will kind of, the focus will radiate, so it's less and less focused as you move away in a circular way. Or the little horizontal line is it will fade out from a horizontal focus. So it will focus a bar across the middle and then radiating out either side. It will grow gradually more blurry. So just play around with those two. One of them is circular, one of them is on a plane. So try different stuff of that, and it's quite easy to use. Basically, once you press the little circular icon, it will immediately sort of fade, but you can actually, it will automatically choose the area of focus, but if you put your finger, you can move it around and pick a different bit, which is quite cool. So you just stick your finger on the screen and move it around to where you want it to be. Same with the horizontal. So it's just another fun thing to play around with. Then there's the kind of like sort of brightness icon. It's also kind of a contrast icon, and basically you just press it once and it really illuminates and enhances the contrast of your photo. It's quite pronounced actually, so that's just another thing to kind of play around with and see if it works or not. It doesn't work on some of the darker photos, but it can sometimes work on things that you wouldn't expect it to. So just have a go, and it's just really easy. So and it's really easy to undo it as well, so it's not like you can make any major mistakes. And then finally there's just the rotate, so you can rotate that actually any number of degrees you want. It used to be that you could just sort of flip it 90 at a time, but you can just actually rotate it as much as you would like, which is handy, because sometimes it doesn't quite work the way you've taken it. So if you particularly took a close-up of a bunch of flowers, say, I mean actually it doesn't really matter, because you've just got the close-up of the flowers, the background doesn't really matter so much, but it might look prettier if you've moved it around. So you can just play around with that and you can rotate it as much as you like. So there's just a bit more homework to just get a little bit more into the photography side. So just take more photos, check your composition, try playing around with the depth of field, try playing around with the kind of brightness contrast button. Again, just kind of have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. I mean, hopefully by now you've really picked up the basics and you're finding it fun anyway. And if you've got any questions, again, just ask in the community. And if you're really interested in the kind of composition stuff, there's absolutely tons on the internet about it. So just go and check it out.